overview of the book of Second Samuel, which is the same as the analysis of the book of Second Samuel. Author is unknown. Author is unknown. Date written after 973 BC. The purpose of the book is to record the history of David's reign, who foreshadowed Christ, the ideal leader of a new and perfect kingdom. To whom written, the nation of Israel. Main theme, the reign of David. Keyword, David, which means beloved. Key verses, 2 Samuel chapter 5 verse 12, which talks about the fact that David's kingdom was exalted by God because of the nation of Israel, which God already had planned. And then chapter 7 verse 12 to 13, when God decided that, David, I will let your son rather build my house for me. A quick summary, which entails the whole book. It's a season of success and times of failure, both in the life of King Saul and also King David, which after the death of King Saul, which it prepares a kind of lineage for the actual king, Jesus, to come in the future through the lineage of David to establish God's kingdom forever. After the death of Saul, as I have just said, David unites all the tribes of Israel and he conquers Jerusalem and named it Zion as a city of God. And David brought the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of God, the Ark of the Covenant. Then he tries to build a temple to place the Ark in to glorify God for all these victories. But God decided that no, David, I will let your son build this temple for me. But God said, I'll rather build a royal dynasty for David, which out of it will lead to the coming and the reign of the real king, Jesus, kingdom on the earth. Some of them can be seen in Psalms number 2, Psalm 72, Psalms 132, Psalm 149, Ezekiel chapter 34, Zechariah, and other books. David failed again by impregnating Bathsheba, somebody's wife, and then killing her husband Uriah, which brought David's downfall with 7 woes or 7 judgments in the house of King David. God now took the baby away. Now the woes began. Amnon commits sin with his sister Tamar, Absalom's sister, and Absalom killed Amnon. And Absalom rebelled again against his father David's kingdom through the advice of Ahithophel. But later on, Absalom dies, Ahithophel dies. David now comes back to Jerusalem. David humbles himself for forgiveness, as is seen in Psalms 51. That we all know what is there. Create me a clean heart and renew a right spirit with me. So David humbles himself for forgiveness and builds another army, a rather stronger army, and defeated the Philistines again. Now David took time to write some poems or psalms, which are in the book of Psalms, and there again there was a plague again for David disobeying, counting the army of God, which God was not happy with that. Finally, David now sacrificed something precious, which touched the heart of God to stop the plague. Okay, now we're going to go through chapter 1 through 24, just the heading. Chapter 1, David hears of Saul's death, and he lamented for the death of Saul and Jonathan. Now, David was anointed over Judah. War came between the house of David and Saul, Saul's son. Okay. 3, Abner goes over to David. Later on, Joab, who was the captain for David, murders Abner. And Ishbosheth also had murdered Saul's son, who also became king, died. Somebody killed him. And David becomes king over all Israel. Now David conquers Jerusalem and defeats the Philistines. Now, chapter 5, the ark was brought to Jerusalem. Chapter 6, God's promise to David. Now David's prayer. Chapter 7, David's victories and David's officials, the army officials. Now, David and Mephibosheth, chapter 8, 2 Samuel chapter 8, as we all know the story, who was Jonathan's son. He was lame. David and Mephibosheth, as we all know, David sent for him and he treated him good. In 2 Samuel chapter 8, and then 2 Samuel chapter 9, David defeats the Ammonites. Chapter 10, David and Bathsheba, the daughter of Oath. The meaning of Bathsheba is the daughter of the oath or the daughter of seven. Okay, chapter 11, Prophet Nathan rebukes David for that sinful act. Now, Amnon and Tamar's incident, I've already talked about it. Absalom kills Amnon. Now, Absalom returns to Jerusalem after, I think, a year or 2 or 3. He returns. And then 15, Absalom's conspiracy against his own father's kingdom. Now David flees. God already had said that I will bring a judgment, and it had already begun. 16, David and Ziba. Shimei curses David. Okay? He thinks now your son is making you run away. Okay? And then now the advice of Ahithophel and Hushai. The Ahithophel's advice did not work. Okay? When God is with you. Because David is a man after God's own heart. Chapter 17, Absalom's death. Now Absalom died, and then David mourns. 19, David returns to Jerusalem. And then 20, Sheba rebels against David, and David officials again. And then the Gibeonites now avenge and war against the Philistines, because Saul was not supposed to go kill them. Joshua's time, they had a covenant with them, and Saul went and killed them. So now there was a revenge. God was punishing them back. So Saul's grandchildren were hanged, 7 of them. Okay, so chapter 22, David's song of praise. 23, David's last words, and then David's mighty warriors. And we all know David enrolls the fighting men, and then David had to build an altar, a huge sacrifice for God to terminate a plague, because David numbered his army, which God was not happy with that. Okay, notable passages. David's generosity to Mephibosheth, chapter 9. And then Prophet Nathan's parable, he rebukes David for the sin he committed. 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 1 to 6. David's Psalms of Thanksgiving, 2 Samuel chapter 22. And then let's look at the synopsis, the breakdowns. First period. So we're going to have first period of King David. We're going to have the middle period, and then we're going to have the final period. That's what the book entails. First period, the early years of the reign. During this period, the king, although engaged in military campaigns common to the age, manifested a spiritual mind, because it's God that put him there. So everything David will seek or consult God, which was beautiful. Okay, so one of them is preliminary events, what actually happened before the actual kingdom. So the execution of the Amalekite who claimed to have killed King Saul. David was not happy for that. Chapter 1, verse 2 to 16. And then David's lamentation for Saul and Jonathan. Chapter 1, verse 17 to 27. David's anointed king over Judah. Chapter 2, verse 4. And then the battle between the followers of David and then the servants of Ishbosheth, Saul's, son, who became king. Okay? Chapter 2, verse 8 to 32. And then facts which indicates that King David was godly. Okay? A, the king will seek the divine direction. Chapter 2, verse 1. Okay? His punishment of those who sought to carry favor by assassinating his rival. Chapter 4, verse 5 to 12. His discernment after having been exalted to be king over all Israel, in perceiving that his promotion had come from God. Okay, so it's good that we always remember where we were, what God has done. David was good at that. Chapter 5, verse 1 to 12. And then D, his humility in attributing his military success to divine power. Chapter 5, verse 20. In other words, 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 20. His enthusiasm for the return of the Ark of the Covenant of God. 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 1 to 5. And then his desire to build a temple for the Lord, and the dedication of great treasures for his construction, even though God said, I will not let you build it. But he prepared all the golden ornaments, all the stuff that would be needed. David prepared all of them. They were huge. They were a huge amount of, gold, diamond, and all kinds of, artifacts. Okay, chapter 7 and chapter 8. Then his kindness to the son of Jonathan, as we all know, Mephibosheth, chapter 9. And then the middle period, the king's great military successes, chapter 10, okay, his fall and punishment. And then he was tempted while at ease. That's why you always have to find something to do for the Lord. Other than that, Satan will give you a job. He was tempted while at ease. Chapter 11, verse 1 to 2. His pollution of a humble home, a murder of Uriah. Chapter 11. Divine judgments overtake the king, David. In the denunciation by Nathan the prophet, chapter 12, verse 1 to 14. In the death of the baby, God took the baby away, chapter 12, verse 15 to 19. And also in the corruption of his son Amnon, chapter 13, verse 1 to 20. In his son Absalom's rebellion, chapter 15, 16, 17, and 18. And then the final period, David's last years, chapter 20, 21, 22, 23, and chapter 24. The prominent people is David, Saul, Jonathan, Ishbosheth, Abner, Joab, Uzzah, Mephibosheth, Bathsheba, Uriah, Solomon, Absalom, and Shimei. May the Lord bless you.